Too often, I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. Again, barefaced lies. Too often, I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. Again.
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Think you wouldn't wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah. Think you think we never wanna defend, yeah. Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal road, barefaced lies.
Barefaced lies. Barefaced lies.
Hey Sean, you got a party? You got that little party going on there. Keep to the left, you can't think right, so everything you do goes wrong, yeah. Incompetence just leads to disaster. Corruption brings it on even faster. What you say?
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Think you wouldn't wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah. Think you think we never wanna defend, yeah. Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shit cold, overgrown, postal road, barefaced. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Think you wouldn't wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah. Think you think we never wanna defend, yeah. Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shit cold, overgrown, postal road, barefaced lies.
Barefaced lies. Barefaced lies.
Comrades, you always told us you'd build us all a new Jerusalem, yeah. You talk the talk, but when you walk, you only leave a crooked line there. And you don't see the trouble that's brewing if all you do is just what you're doing.
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Think you wouldn't wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah. Think you think we ever wanna defend, yeah. Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shit cold, overgrown, postal road, barefaced lies.
Is this where you wanna be? Debt and childhood poverty. Won't somebody set us free from this corrupt kleptocracy? Oh yeah.
Barefaced lies.
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Think you wouldn't wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah. Think you think we ever wanna defend, yeah. Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shit cold, overgrown, postal road, barefaced. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Think you wouldn't wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah. Think you think we ever wanna defend, yeah. Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shit cold, overgrown, postal road, barefaced. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Think you wouldn't wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah. Think you think we ever wanna defend, yeah. Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shit cold, overgrown, postal road, barefaced. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Think you wouldn't wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah. Think you think we ever wanna defend, yeah. Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011 he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.
A very, very good evening, 23rd of February 2025. My name is Raj Amir, and this is one of those Recusant 9 transmissions. We try and do these, well, nearly every Sunday night. I know I was away last Sunday, but I hopefully made up for it with a couple of midweek, and I even did a Friday night transmission. So hopefully we're all up to date and up to speed on developments. I always ask people to like, to share, at least like the broadcasts if you find value in them, and if you don't and you're here, well, like them anyway. Say hello. Do say hello in the group chat. Thank you, Paul. Paul is one of the reform team in Oldham. A prominent position, secretary, I think, aren't you, Paul? So thank you very much, and thank you very, very much for taking an interest in my work and joining us on this journey. I will talk about reform later on this evening, if I may. So you'll have to humour me. And it was good to meet you. I went to a rally, I suppose. Protest is the wrong word. I went to a rally yesterday. My friend Billy from PAG UK, Parents Against Grooming UK, he's been doing them for years now. And I tried to get to as many of them as I can. I struggled really because they tend to be on a Saturday. And I'm rarely free on a Saturday due to family commitments, my daughter commitments really. I'm rarely free on a Saturday. But I managed to be free this Saturday, and I went to see Billy and I spoke at his rally. I struggle speaking in public in that way, if I'm honest with you. It's not my thing. Rallies and flags and shouting and screaming, I mean, it's necessary. I'm not in any way maligning it at all. It's just not my style. I'm a far more conservative sort of person. But I try my best. And I went and I listened to Billy speak, and Billy does a really good presentation. I've seen it now a few times, and he has a whole host of photographs that he holds up, and he basically calls out a whole host of politicians, police officers with clear evidence as to why they should be investigated, arrested. And he did that. There's always a couple of survivors who speak, and I think they're very brave, and it gives them purpose as well. I think it's clear. It gives them purpose, and it helps them cope with what's going on. And then, of course, my friend Nick Buckley, who ran for mayor, who's been a long-time supporter of Billy and that group of people, even though that group of people, some of them are politically not my cup of tea, if I'm honest with you. I go to these things, Nick goes to those things. We smile, we talk, we do what is required, because we know we need to engage in those places, plant our feet in those places, and try and advocate that there is a mainstream way through this, there is a lawful way through this, and that's through the ballot box, that's through lawful campaigning, that's through awareness raising. And that's my angle, really. My friend Nick Tenconi was there. He's growing into his role. I think more and more I see him into this maverick UKIP leader that he is. This time I saw him, they had crosses, crucifixes, and he's got an angle. You know, him and his team have got an angle, and it's not for me to say it's right or wrong. I admire the man. I think his heart is in the right place. Don't necessarily agree with his policies or some of his methods, but I know they ran into trouble afterwards in Piccadilly Gardens, and I don't think, in fact, I know it wasn't through any action of him or any of the people who were there with them. Unfortunately, we have a rabid left. Can I use that term? Rabid left. And they seek the confrontation, they seek the agitation, and they're determined to create a space where I don't even think, and I watched some of it play out, I don't even think they want the confrontation. I don't think they want the fight. I think it's increasingly clear. It's increasingly clear that what these people want is to make sure that the rest of the world, the wider society, sees the people who occupy this space as a bunch of far-right extremists, even though they're not, and there's nothing untoward that went on from what I could see. But they need to push that narrative. They need to push that narrative. So you see it in the mainstream newspapers, they use the word far-right all the time to describe people and organisations without quantifying actually what far-right is or how what they are makes them far-right. So first and foremost, you see that. But the Antifa lot, actually, they serve a purpose. And it's very clear to me, the more and more I look at it, they serve a purpose, because they go and antagonise, provoke, and the wider public who are just going about their Saturday business see conflict, and they don't distinguish, they don't differentiate, and they just will place Nick and his team in that space. So I think that's the strategy, actually. And it would be my strategy, if I'm honest with you, if I was wanting to demonise and continue to demonise all of us and the issues that we stand for. And I think we need to be cleverer and far more sophisticated in how we go about what we do. Yeah. Ali. That's you don't want to know that. You already know that. Because power matters to them more than the country that they claim to be proud of matters to them. Power is the highest level of currency for these people. They traded children for votes. They'll trade the country for votes. They'll trade your community for votes. You already know the answer to that. Hi, Nicky. How are you doing? I know Nicky's not been well, so it's good to see Nicky used to come out and deliver leaflets with me. So, some time ago, when we were actually campaigning for Robert, who was up here, isn't it, Nicky? I don't know if you ever met Robert, but we were campaigning for Robert, but we were independently campaigning for Robert, and we got help to get him over the line in South Chadderton. You don't need to, you can just catch up. I'm just saying hello to people. No, nothing else really to start off with. I need to start with also talking about, the rally itself. They serve a purpose, and they serve a purpose where we draw strength from the people who gathered there, the good networking opportunities, they're good to meet people in real life and chat to people. And I got the impression, I left with a clear impression that a number of people took value in stopping and saying hello to me and meeting me in real life. I found it uncomfortable, if I'm honest, but that's part and parcel of the space I now occupy. My immediate family members rarely want to take photographs with me. Never mind people I've just met. So I think they are powerful, and I left thinking they are powerful. And I'll be honest, and it's not a criticism, on their own they're not enough. On their own they're nowhere near anything enough. And on their own it's contained. The establishment contain us. If all we do is march on the odd day out or hold rallies, we need to really go out and politically educate and mobilise entire communities. because that's the only way. That's the only way we'll make the progress we need to make. Yes, and Nikki helped get Shah out, didn't she, Gary? You were, okay. Okay, moving on. I put a plea out to increase my subscriptions on Redwall and the Rebel. Of course, it's free. It's the newsletter through which I share my content. I've shared some extensive written work this week. An article, and substantial article, probably would take you 20 minutes to read, went out this morning. So 20 minutes for you to read took me, I think, a day and a half to write. So I hope you found value in it. And for those of you whose preference isn't reading, if you just drop me a message and let me know, and if enough of you are interested, I'll go away and do it, and I'll narrate it. I've got a mic here and some podcasting sort of software, so I can narrate some of that and put it out. So it's not like me looking this way, but I can put it out like a podcast. I have no. You did. I asked if you'd drove up, but you'd been driven up, hadn't you? And that's what it's good for, that networking. So no, if you want me to narrate it, let me know. It's a 20-minute read, and I can narrate it. It's probably like a half an hour podcast. It'll probably make a good podcast. It's just about finding the time. So I'll do that. So thank you very, very much to all of you who are signing up. I can confirm with you, and I've gone and looked at the figures. I mean, I don't know what to think of them, really. For every 50 people that are signing up, 49 of them are signing up for free. So 1 out of every 50 are signing up as paid members. And that's in the main on the £30. I'd say I've had a couple much higher, and I'm thankful to those who have, but in the main we've had 48, 49 out of 50 are on the free tier. So I'll carry on for as long as I can carry on. Yeah, I'm not interested. I try, and I'm not interested. I can't do shorts. And I put a video out yesterday. The day before. I put a video out the day before. I spent 3 hours editing a transmission I put out, because people said, they're too long, and then cut it down, chopped it all the way to 17 minutes. And I'll tell you how many viewed it. Just give me a second. So I'm afraid we there's only me, and we're just not getting the content. 800 views in total, which is, for the sort of stuff I do, is 800's very low. And even then, when you look at the algorithm, I knocked it down to 15-16 minutes, and the average view duration was 4 minutes. It's just not worth it. It's not, as in, I'm finding it difficult to quantify the time that goes into it, really. So I've spoke to people, and they want to get involved. I'm of an age where I've worked in big teams, I've worked in small teams. I've got this far working on my own, and I'm going to continue working on my own in the way and muddle through it the way I do. I've spoken to people, I've sent stuff off to be edited, and then it comes back and they miss the point, and they zoom in, zoom out, mess around them. And then they inquire as to whether or not there's any form of them getting paid. And listen, 50 of you that sign up, I'm getting back £3. So no, not for me, I'm afraid. Okay, let's go on with this evening's transmission. If you do find value, please do consider buying me a coffee at the very least, if you're not going to sign up. So this is going on in Tameside. Come out, it's the Fort Police. And what you're finally seeing, and I know Abul Tahir and I know Mark Hookham. Now, Mark Hookham did a number of pieces in Oldham on Arud Shah and her associations with Dale Cregan's getaway driver Irish Imi and the connection then with Angela Rayner. So they've had their eye on Oldham for a while. And I get on with Mark. I spoke with Abul Tahir a couple of times and I don't really get on with him in the same way, if I'm honest with you. And it's because they missed the point. He misses the point a lot. And I think he's missed the point here. So the headline is, come out, it's the Fort Police. And of course these two police officers have rocked up to this grandmother's house because she's criticised in Tameside. She's criticised the MP, who's by the way suspended. Criticised the MP. And it's the Fort Police, it's the criticism of human rights and freedom of speech. It's actually far worse than that. And these guys know it. Abul Tahir and Mark Hookham know it. But they won't go that far because at the end of the day, it's an establishment newspaper. It's still the Mail on Sunday. And what's took place in Greater Manchester, because this is Greater Manchester Police, and Tameside Police are the people who come and arrest me because I live in Mosley, which is Tameside. So what's took place is a political decision to go after anyone that criticises Labour Party politicians. And that political decision, if it hasn't come from the Police and Crime Commission Andy Burnham, the Police and Crime Commission Andy Burnham should really be putting a stop to it. None of this in this way took place until we created these metro mayors and police and crime commissioners. We politicised the police force. And what you're now witnessing are the consequences of a political police force. And if we want to translate that into language that you might understand, a political police force is what I would use the word Gestapo to describe, or Stasi to describe. So that is now what is taking place in Greater Manchester. The police have been mobilised against the political opponents. And when I say political opponents, I mean anyone who just criticises powerful Labour Party figures. I had one of my supporters contact me this morning. In fact, I spent some time this afternoon writing a response for him to Greater Manchester Police. He's one of the few openly Muslim supporters we have. The police phoned him at 1:30 in the morning. 1:15 in the morning. The police phoned him at 1:15 in the morning. And the police officer claimed it's a 24-hour service and they can phone whenever they want. They phoned him to warn him that they'd received a complaint. Now, he's a vocal critic of Oldham Council, openly, with his name. He's a vocal critic of Oldham Council. No criminal record, nothing like that, family man. Children. Vocal critic of Oldham Council. 1:15 a.m, they call him. They tell him they've had a complaint for harassment. Now, Gary's here, and Gary will tell you that we have evidence against councillors in Oldham Council who have committed crimes against him, committed crimes against me, and the police won't even contact these people. But at 1:15 in the morning, they contact my friend by phone to say they've had a complaint of harassment against him from a female. And they give him the female's name and claim it's his sister. To which he responds, I don't have a sister by that name. And of course, he has a healthy relationship with his sisters, so he knows none of his sisters have gone to the police to complain about harassment against him. The police officer ignores the fact that he doesn't have a sister by that name and continues to warn him down the phone that on this occasion, I'm not going to do anything, but if you do it again, I'm going to come and arrest you. So he's allegedly harassed an imaginary woman who's his sister. The police won't tell him how he's harassed this woman, but they warned him over the phone at 1:15 in the morning, and if he does it again, they'll come and arrest him. This is how unbelievable the police force in Greater Manchester now is. So come out, it's the Thought Police. It's far, far worse than that. This is a weaponized police force that is going after critics of the Labour Party and anyone who criticises the Labour Party run administration in Tameside, in Oldham, in places like that. And of course, they only need to make an example out of one or two people to make sure that other people then shut up and not say anything. Now, Greater Manchester Police, until recently, were in special measures, and apparently one of the most improved police force in the country. It's absolute nonsense. The police are the weapons of the political establishment in a way they haven't been. Since when? I don't know. Maybe the miners' strike? And the IOPC, I'm sorry, Sally, the IOPC is set up in such a way where you can't access the IOPC. If you complain to the police, as I have, you can't access the IOPC because the IOPC then send it back to the local police force first. And then it gets lost in there for months at a time. The Police and Crime Commissioner is a woman called Kate Green, appointed by Andy Burnham, who has the delegated powers for this, and she's complicit in covering all of this up. So every time I turn on my camera and I speak to you live, and I go to bed, to this day, I wake up in a cold sweat about 4 or 5 in the morning, imagining someone's banging on my door. Because every time they banged on my door, it's been about 6 in the morning. And that has been my life for the last 4 years or so. Now, the police have been weaponized in such a way. They're not just a thought police, they're far more than that. In that they know who the gangsters are that work on behalf of the politicians, who the Islamists are that work on behalf of the politicians, and they allow them to continue to harass, to intimidate, to commit acts of crime against those of us who dare speak out. In the general election, there was a pensioner, an elderly gentleman, fit, but an elderly gentleman who delivered leaflets for me. My election leaflets. He was chased down the street by a mob, fell over and absolutely ruined himself. The police made no arrests. The police did not go looking for anyone. The police are partners. Which is why when you read the headlines today about 10 police officers being investigated in Rotherham, many of you were shocked, as in being investigated under the grooming gang inquiry. That's not new. 10 police officers were identified in 2014 in Rotherham. I don't know what came of them. I would imagine the police covered it up and protected them, because that's what the police do. But 10 police officers were identified as far back as 2014. And they were referenced in the reports. The complicity of the police was referenced in the reports. So the police have a vested interest in this, particularly in places like South Yorkshire, Greater Manchester. They have a vested interest. What I am disappointed by in this headline, and bring the headline up again as well, another reason I'm disappointed, is both Abul Tahir and Mark Hookham knew that the Labour Party campaigner, Irish Immy, Dale Cregan's getaway driver, had been arrested for possession of an offensive weapon and criminal damage. He was charged as well. All of that mysteriously disappeared. It's what happens in towns like mine. They knew, they never ran with the story. So whatever story they've put out, you need to accept it's a sanitised version. It's a little bit of tittle-tattle, and to make you maybe be outraged. What is really taking place is far, far more sinister. I only speak from a position of experience. I don't know any Conservative controlled councils. If you're finding value, please like, please share, and let's get on with this evening's. I'm going to play a speech by Keir Starmer early on today.
Race. It's written into the fabric of every community in this nation. The skills jobs that disappear, the communities that lost their place in the world. Not just the security and dignity of their work, not just their pride and purpose, their identity. That's the price of inaction when the winds of change blow this hard. The price of losing the race for new industries. And look, this is political as well. If we don't show a path to the future, others will fill that void. In fact, they already are. A dangerous right-wing politics, even here in Scotland, that will say they are the ones who can tilt politics towards the interests of working people, even as their proposals do precisely the opposite. A politics which feeds off the failure of the free market, the failure of public services to reform, and above all, the failure to control borders properly. We have to be ready for this test conference, ready to point out that beneath their bluster, the alternative they offer is alien to working people. You want to know what Farage and Reform are doing? on their rare visits to Parliament. They're voting against our employment rights bill. They talk the language of workers' rights online and on the doorstep, but they voted against banning fire and rehire. They voted against scrapping exploitative zero-hour contracts. They voted against sick leave and maternity pay. And what about the NHS? They want to charge people to use our NHS. They claim to be the party of patriotism, but they're fawning over Putin. No, they are not the answer for working people in Britain. And they are not the answer for Scotland. And contrast that with what you've seen from Anas and Jackie this weekend. What you've seen from the difference we're making in Westminster. And it's day and night. Only Labour can make the difference for working people. Only Labour will put more money in your pocket. Only Labour will fix our broken economy. Only Labour will secure our border. Only Labour can save our NHS, put police back on your streets, give our children the opportunities they deserve. Only Labour can deliver change for Scotland.
Only Labour can deliver change. And we made it about the far right. Dangerous right-wing politics. Sorry, not the far right. Dangerous right-wing politics. And he specifically referenced Reform and Nigel Farage. I think it's very clear what is going on now. And you need to take heart from it. Every one of you needs to take heart from it. What you now have is the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom openly worried about reform. This has never happened in my lifetime. Maybe it happened before, I don't know, but it has never happened in my lifetime. Of a populist party movement such as Reform, because that's what they are. There's nothing wrong with being populist, by the way. Now you've got 4 years before the next general election. He's not even into the end of his first year, and he knows who the opposition is. Because the opposition isn't the Conservatives. Not the National Party. It isn't the Conservatives. Kemi Badenoch has next to no substance in terms of policies. Actually, Reform have more policies. And Kemi Badenoch's solutions many ways. And I've been reading on this. I'm not a Conservative, I'm not Reform, I've been reading. They're just tinkering with what Labour do and vice versa. So what you've now got is 5 Reform MPs who are dictating the national narrative. And I wouldn't even say all 5 of them. So probably 3 of them, 4 maybe. They're dictating the national narrative. They're setting the agenda. And Keir Starmer and the Labour Party and the establishment is rightfully worried. So what will Keir Starmer and the Labour Party do now when they talk about the answer for working people, because they claim Labour is the answer for working people? Well, where I come from, Labour long ago betrayed the working people. In opposition, or go back to the time of Tony Blair, betrayed the working people. I talk about demonised, dispossessed and disenfranchised working class communities, and I had a disagreement with someone with a fake profile here last week. Introduced himself as Lord Lucan. Talked about going to the council estates and like that picking up the votes. Now, Labour did to those communities something which effectively politically broke them. And they have no trust left for any politician, regardless of political persuasion. You go into these working class estates, you go to the polling stations where these estates are, and the ballot boxes and the registers in front of them. The people who turn out to vote are in double figures, 20, 50, 75. And I believe we do have a chance. But to have a chance, we need to understand what needs to happen, and we need to be pragmatic, not delusional. So the idea that at the next general election, all these working classes will come out and vote for reform, you might as well go and smoke crack, inject yourself with heroin, and have a spliff or two whilst you're at it. It's delusional. And take that from someone who has been campaigning for a long time. Labour broke the white working class. And what little there is left of you, with a voice, they've compartmentalised into a number of areas. One, go and engage with fringe parties. No offence to anyone who belongs to those, but we'll go and engage with fringe parties because they know those fringe parties will never be able to mobilise in the way needed to challenge them. Nudge you towards genuine extremist individuals or organisations so they can demonise you. And should you avoid either of that and just be an independent voice, send the police round to try and shut you up. All of that means nothing. I've seen all of that. It means absolutely nothing. And I'll explain why it means nothing. I've seen all of that. It's not people don't even bother voting. I've gone to places, people don't even know how or why. They think they're voting for the Prime Minister, some of them, when they're voting for an MP. When a councillor's standing, they think they're voting for something else. All of that has been taken away, and by the time the next general election comes around, Labour will have changed the law to allow 16-year-olds to vote. And what happens with young people is the indoctrination through the existing education system. By the time they get to 16, 18, the vast majority of them are Labour supporters. It's only through life experience, for those of them who continue to remain politically engaged, it's only through life experience that they move away. So, today was going to be about the warning signs. The first warning sign of a sectarian surrender, sectarian takeover, is this. Not bothering to vote or not knowing who to vote for, not understanding any of it. And no offence to you at all, Annie. You just happened to put that up at the same time as I was going to say it. So that's the first thing you've got. The second thing you've got is a number of actions from within the Asian communities themselves, the predominantly Pakistani community themselves. And I'll run through them in no particular order. The first one is, in terms of danger signs to look out for, is what we have across the Northwest, is the links between organised crime and politicians. They go hand in hand. So that photograph I used at the beginning, I put up of the Oldham group in my own town. The leader is a man called Cameron Gaffer. Cameron Gaffer's brother was on Greater Manchester's most wanted list. His deputy is a councillor called Abdul Wahid. Abdul Wahid's brother is a convicted drug dealer. They're up against the Labour Party, with the leader of the Labour Party in my town, Arud Shah. She hangs off the arm of Dale Cregan's getaway driver, a cop killer's getaway driver. Go to Bradford, you'll see the same. Go to Rochdale, you'll see the same. There's a direct link between organised crime and politicians. And when I say direct link, I mean family members, immediate family members. And the heroin business. No ifs, no buts, no maybes. Drug dealers and politicians are like that. Then you look at the councillors themselves, or the people who speak on behalf. They've got a track record of not just anti-white racism, so they'll hold people like you in contempt, or they'll talk the talk in front of you, some of them, until the mask slips. But when it comes to other matters, 100% anti-Semitism. The politicians where I come from, the Muslim politicians where I come from, anti-Semitism is up there. Some have even been thrown out of mainstream political parties because of their anti-Semitic views. They don't even hide it. They don't even hide it. Yeah, Rupert's doing something, isn't he, with Maya Tushi? Good. Good. The next one is you see these councillors, they have no loyalty to the political party, no loyalty to Labour, Conservatives. For them, belonging to Labour or belonging to the Conservatives is just a means to an end. And many of them leave and then come back as independents. What we mean by independents are sectarians. And if you pin them down on their beliefs, they're not representative of everyone. They're religiously exclusive. The voter base almost exclusively comes from one religious group. In no way are they representative. They claim to represent the community, but if you look closer, they never field, for instance, non-Muslim candidates. And some of the white people who get drawn to them, it's like what's a polite way of putting it? It's like a shunned ex-girlfriend. They've been shunned elsewhere, so they're going somewhere else for attention. You'll see it. Then you've got how they campaign and where the political headquarters are. Mosques, community centres with an ethnic name attached to it. So it's the Pakistani community centre. It's the Bangladeshi community centre. It's the Kashmiri community centre. Yeah? The ethnic names attached to it. And because they can coordinate there, they exclude the others then, don't they? Campaign meetings don't happen in public spaces because these aren't really public spaces. They happen in mosques, ethnic specific community centres, places where only certain groups feel welcome. And then I'm sorry, I've seen it myself. Imams push political candidates from the pulpit. Where I come from, they issued a fatwa, a religious decree of who not to vote for. In Tower Hamlets, Lutfur Rahman eventually got kicked out first time round because it was found that the imams gave religious doctrine as to who to vote for and who not to vote for. And if you're not part of the group, if you're not part of the community centres, if you're not part of mosques and the little cliques that they belong to, the pressure that you have living in that community then is that you're excluded. So you shut up and hand over your postal votes, which means the next one, number 6. There's intimidation and voter fraud is off the scale. And it's because postal votes are harvested. It's as simple as that. Postal votes are harvested. And then there are threats against opposition candidates. In the lead up to the general election, which is the only time I've ever run, I haven't witnessed it firsthand. There were regular phone calls to me and people who were part of my team asking me politely to step down. Night after night, candidates that had initially announced themselves turned up on some sort of kidnapping type video, would have been filmed agreeing that they were stepping down to go behind the candidate, the cartel candidate of choice. And this isn't new, it's been happening for years. And just as with the grooming gangs, the authorities are too scared to intervene. Too scared to intervene. Another sign you want to look out for is parallel power structures that rule from the shadows. So officially, councillors make the decisions. But in reality, in these places, unelected community leaders. Have you ever heard of such a phrase, community leaders? Do you have a community leader where you come from? It's absurd, isn't it? Community leaders, or sometimes community elders, they pull the strings. Key decisions are made in private meetings. Smoke-filled, late night in restaurants and takeaways. Will they agree what's good for the clan, what's good for the community? And then they'll be rubber stamped in the council chamber afterwards. This is how real power operates in these places, completely out of sight. Yeah, I saw it. And you know what? When Lutfer Rahman got back in, I clapped. I applauded. Do you know why? Because he was doing exactly what the Labour Party had been doing for decades. He just outplayed them at their own game. And what you saw in Tower Hamlets will happen elsewhere. I didn't clap because I agreed with it. I clapped at the outrage coming from the left because this Muslim candidate has just took all the techniques and used it to benefit himself and his small group. There's these patronage networks. You just answered the question, ain't you? You restrict it for those who need it. You restrict it for those who need it, rather than anyone. And you put in place far more steps. Yeah. I don't know about the Muslim Brotherhood, but I've seen a couple of interesting speakers who are arriving into the UK. Now, I don't think the majority of Muslim countries would have. Yeah, that's what happened. They have a meeting the night before. Phone calls take place. They're exclusive, aren't they? You're excluded from it. Democracy is a facade. Patronage networks. if you're not one of them. What do I mean by that? You in a council job? You in a contract for funding? You want your group to be able to use the community centre? You want a grant? If you want your back alleys cleaning before someone else's? It all goes to their own people. If you run a local business that don't fall in line, well then you're shut out. This isn't about just who runs the council, it's about who controls the money. And that's why I don't think it's a straightforward Islamist thing here. There's two elements within these Pakistani groups. One are the criminal cartels, who've held on to it for a long time, and the other emerging group are the Islamists. And they'll fight with each other sooner or later. You'll see, they'll fight with each other sooner or later. Now, all of this can only happen if law enforcement turns a blind eye, if the police turn a blind eye. Grooming gangs, drugs, fraud, you see it on the simplest of level. Go into one of these places. Glodic, I pick. Where I come from, a predominantly Pakistani area, Glodic. Infamous. You won't find a parking warden there. They can park wherever they want, however they want. So even on something as low level as that, never mind serious organised crime. Why? Did the police fear being accused of being racist? No. It's more than that. It's a partnership with the politicians who are there. They represent those communities. The police do as they're told, and in return the politicians support the police when things go wrong. It's a complete mess. And the consequence of all of that, the most dangerous sign of you've all but lost, is when they openly not just oppose integration, we facilitate parallel structures, and hand in hand we surrender our own norms. So forget mixed schools. Nah, no secular governance, no. Everything must be separate. Anyone who questions them is immediately branded far right or Islamophobic. And this isn't about creating equal rights, it's about creating a parallel system where they alone hold power and you are pushed out. And the consequence of that is this. Five Guys. A burger place I occasionally visit because my daughter enjoys it and I can't afford it, so I sit and eat the chips that we share. The last time we spoke to Five Guys, this is by a page called The Halal Life. It's made national news now. Thank you, Nicola, for sending me a PayPal over. And if someone else has, please, thank you. Thank you. My apologies for missing if anyone else has supported me. I'm looking at the well, she's just done that. I'm looking at my sign-ups. Not a single paid sign-up. It's since 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock. Please, if you're on the free subscription or if you're here and you haven't signed up, consider signing up to Redwall and the Rabble. It does make a difference. But this is where you end up, and this is why you get angry, because you know subconsciously, even if you can't put your finger on it, you know what's going on. You're being pushed out. You know what's going on. You're being pushed out, and you're right. But there's a political current to what's going on. Birmingham Fort, Leeds Trinity, Leicester Cheapside, London Park Royal, the Manchester Andale one. No bacon, no hot dogs, no alcohol. Can you imagine a vegetarian forcing themselves on you? And you've got to eat corned meat or something? Yeah. It's not the boycott. That should concern you. It's the fact, and it doesn't matter what happens afterwards either. This is a move. What you can eat and what you can't eat in and around the communities where they want to, spread their wings. How you can dress, how you can't dress. That's also for the people from within that community, never mind outside of that community. And push people out, and then it increasingly becomes an enclave with rules all of their own. And in one generation, because it's just been one generation that's got us here, in the next generation, the next 20 years, these guys will be pushing for policies that create in all but name, my honest opinion, Islamic enclaves. And they won't stop in one place or another. They'll pop up in more places and more places. And it all starts with the dodgy political representation. Gangsters, Pakistani gangsters, the power behind Pakistani politicians who were once Labour Party politicians or Conservative politicians have now fronting the Islamic parties because they believe themselves, in the same way Labour thought they could control them, these people now believe they can control the growing number of Islamists, might be too strong, conservative Muslim, I'd say. I've read the stuff. I don't know how real those articles are, but they don't need to be real, do they? Because they play on your subconscious, because you feel this. You feel this. And we've got our own equivalent, haven't we? Go and have a look at what happened in Northern Ireland and how we built walls. We're not above this, people. We are not above this. So I say to all of you, if you want to stop this, we need to get politically organised. And the first election we have where I am is 2026. And the first agreement has got to be this. We will not enter into any form of partnership with Pakistani sectarians. We will not enter into any form of partnership with Pakistani sectarians. Which is why I'm so disappointed that I am hearing from credible sources. And by now you know When I talk about credible sources, I mean credible sources. That the interim chairman of Reform in Oldham, who race baits on publicly on his Reform Reform Facebook page, and I'm sorry, making reference to people who look like me as Pakis now, in this day and age, is, well, it's stupidity. If you want to win elections, allowing those sorts of posts to stay up is absolute stupidity. But what's even more dangerous, is that the Pakistani sectarians believe that they're going to be going for meals with them. Entering into negotiations with them. If you support reform, and where I am currently, I support reform. I'm not a member or anything, but I look at the policies. I look at who is going to give the alternative, and I'm sorry, the other fringe parties haven't got a chance in hell. The only game in town for people like us who have these political viewpoints is reform. It's impossible for me to support reform where they are promoting a racist narrative or encouraging a racist narrative. But worse than that, is where they are having conversations with Pakistani sectarians about potential power brokering. I cannot stand for that. And I will speak out against it. Because these people will play you in the same way they played the Labour Party, in the same way that they played the Conservatives. Do you think they'll change? You'll just be a means to an end for them. So my plea to those of you who are involved in the politics of reform is at the very least agree on first base here. We do not enter into any form of negotiations with Pakistani sectarians. We will not break bread with Islamists. And even if we lose, I'd rather lose than be exploited by those. I mean, where will this end? Where will this end? So, you've seen the signs. You know how they've completely demonized, dispossessed, and disenfranchised the white working class. What does it take, Raja? Let's be upbeat. What does it take? I'll tell you right now. Give me 100 people. 100 of you in Oldham, and we'll clean up reform. 100 of you in Tameside, and we'll mobilise you in such a way where you'll politically be winning elections. I'm based in the northwest, but I can come anywhere else. I can go up to Huddersfield. I can go down anywhere down in the country. Give me 100 people, and I will give you a template on how you can win an election without the nonsense of a fantasy that handing out leaflets on white working class estates who haven't voted in generations will somehow come out and vote for you. You're going to the meeting? Ask him. I've got the videos. I've seen the videos of before he became chairman of Reform, of going to a meal with the Oldham group to try and agree how they would take control of the town. Are the Oldham group any different now than they were 3 months ago, 6 months ago? So, and I've not shared this with anyone, my hope is I will have a conversation with Reform in Tameside because that's where I live. I encourage those of you in Oldham or anywhere else to go and join Reform. Or you can join the Conservatives if you want. If you believe the Conservatives will change, if you believe the Conservatives will deliver, we've got 18 months. But go and join a political party. One of those two. Go and join. Any of the others, you're not going to win. Mate, I'm not interested. I know enough about my Islam and I'm comfortable with that. There are people who come to where I am thinking I'm going to join this anti-Muslim movement. I'm not. My position I've made clear from the outset. We have to find a way of living together. I'm not interested in having a pissing contest over your religion's bad, my religion's good. Because what I've found in my life is whoever believes in whatever they believe is the person that finds the good and bad in stuff and lives their life by it. That's what you want. You go and do it somewhere else. I'm not interested. I'm interested in trying to safeguard and support ordinary people to play a part in their communities and protect the place they call home. So, 100 people, and you will take control of the council where you are. Or you'll get councillors in at the very least. Or more and more segments of towns, cities across the country will become Islamic enclaves, and the white working class will become so disenfranchised. I don't know how to say this without being disrespectful. You might as well be slaves. So, that's where I am today. I will come back and I'll do another transmission specifically, I think Tuesday I'm aiming for, on the police and their role in the grooming gangs. I've spoken to survivors who've shared with me their own experiences. I've kept it to myself, and I think it's now with the latest story of 10 in Rotherham breaking. I think it's time I shared with you what I've known for some time and carried for some time. Of the actual specifics of that relationship, I'll bring that to you on Tuesday night. My ask of you tonight is go and join a political party. Go and join the Conservatives if you believe that'll be the way, or go and join Reform. But if 100 of you in Oldham join Reform, well, I can't guarantee you, but I can guarantee you we will win council seats. And it's same in Tameside's a lot cleaner actually. I might even join Reform after I've met with them in Tameside. So that's where I am. Please, if you found value, you've liked, there's just under 200 of you have liked it, from the 954 who've joined me this evening. So if you've liked it, thank you very much. If you found value in it, perhaps you've bought me a coffee. And if you have, I'm extremely grateful. But at the very least, my ask of all of you who come across me is sign up to the bloody newsletter. Sign up to the webpage, Redwall and the Rabble. And whilst it is completely free, and the vast majority of you who are signing up are taking advantage of that, you need to understand this. I am 100% funded by you. And if you don't support me, then my ability to continue becomes difficult. We've gone from local to national. I'm here to help people across the country now. So please, sign up. No one else is doing this. No one else will do this. No one else is going to put themselves where I am. And you're right, one of you is right. And I am perhaps fortunate because I'm from a background that understands these people, because I grew up from those places. They want their enclaves, and they will manipulate whichever political group they can into believing they are entering a partnership when really they are being nothing but used. My plea to anyone in reform is do not get in bed with Pakistani sectarians, because what they want is not what we want. My name is Raj Amir. This was the Recusant 9 transmission. Very good evening.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011 he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.